Hello.
Open up your eyes, see the beauty around you, and open up your ears and hear nature calling you, and open up your heart and feel the love he has for you, and open up your hand and give to the one who needs you. We got so much to do. The day is here for you. We got mitzvahs to do. That's all we got to do. And if you're feeling down, don't be alarmed. Just look to the one above and ask him for his love.
And welcome everybody once again. My name is Rabbi Shlomo Nachman, and I am very happy that you are all joining us today for a very special edition of What Now? Or Now What? We always go back and forth with the name of this broadcast, as you know, but whatever you want to call it, we are thrilled that you are here with us today. We're going to have a very special guest today. It is a man whose name I'm probably going to somewhat mispronounce throughout the broadcast, just giving you a heads up, named MaNishtana. Is that right? MaNishtana. Close enough?
That works.
That works. All right. I'm just sort of going phonetically by his page. MaNishtana. He'll give you the correct pronunciation in just a moment. We're also joined today by our friend Donald Willinger and also by Shoshi Randalls and her wonderful husband Shlomoshin, or Shlomo Silverman, will also be coming in as soon as he finishes chopping the wood for our broadcast. Shlomo introduced me to MaNishtana a while back, and actually we have been trying to connect for a few weeks now and haven't really made it too much. But I know enough to know that this is a fascinating man with a fascinating story to tell. So what I want to do at the beginning of the broadcast today is I want him to share his experiences as a Jewish man with a lot of knowledge and a fascinating story. As always, if you have any questions or comments as we go through, I invite you to post them in the chat screen. We will occasionally pause in his story or in my comments to his story to read your questions, and we'll do this as a nice, friendly conversation. We'll go for about an hour like we normally do, and then for the second hour, we'll more or less keep doing the same thing as we do when we have guests with us. I'd like to begin by welcoming Guy or Frank. Glad that you're here. Guy says he's going to be in and out. And also Stephen Ewing is with us. Don't have too many people that I'm seeing signed in yet, but as usual, we will grow, I'm sure. If you can mute your microphone. I should have mentioned that part.
I'm trying.
Not sure whose mic that is. There we go. Okay. So basically we're going to go as usual, and hopefully we'll be growing as we go on and that type of a thing. So let's go ahead and get started. So first of all, MaNishtana, would you please give me the correct pronunciation of your name?
MaNishtana.
MaNishtana. Okay, so it's because usually with Hebrew you emphasize... I'm peeking a little. Usually with Hebrew, you emphasize the last letter, but sometimes you don't, and so you never know. If you're open for it, I would encourage you to turn on your camera so folks can see you, but that is totally up to you.
Sure. Let me see if I can just pop that on. There we go.
There we go. All right, so is Shlomo here with us, Shoshi? Yet?
He isn't quite yet.
That's
he
all right.
Will.
That's fine. I was just going to give him the chance to give a little opening statement before, because, again, I met MaNishtana through him. I'm sorry. I have enough problems with English, and I'm a rabbi. It's just terrible. Uh, anyway, so please, if you would, tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, and that sort of thing.
So I'm a writer, speaker, rabbi, and I generally speak and talk on racial and religious identity and how those two intersections manifest generally in American Judaism, but just in America as a whole. Um, Grew up Chabad, then I got better.
I didn't say that. He did.
I said that. It's okay. My second ordination is a Chabad ordination. That's
Right.
the one I'm currently in. So, joke's on me. um, Both my parents are also African American and Jewish. My dad converted through Chabad. My mother's family has been here as African American Jews since the 1780s in this country. So we've been here a while, and it's me in a nutshell, I guess.
It's great. There's so many people. I get really funny mail sometimes. I get mail from people who are telling me that you white-skinned devils are stealing our religion, that the Jews are actually all brown. And then I get people in Africa sometimes writing me, telling me, no, the real Jews are black and the Garden of Eden was in Ethiopia.
Hmm.
And then I get these white people who are saying, it's insane. It's like people don't seem to understand Judaism is not a race. Judaism is an ethnic community, but I think the most accurate thing to say is we're an extended family.
That is exactly the analogy that I like to use.
Yeah.
Where, sure, families, there's like a genetic base of what that family is, but then you can marry in and be part of the family. You can be adopted and be part of the family. And
Yeah.
that's completely accurate.
I'm sorry.
No, it's completely accurate.
Yeah. I have African American nephews that are just some of the best guys you'd ever want to meet in your life. My mom is 96. And frankly, I just moved back here to Georgia. So again, I'm sort of in her area. I was in California for years. But the people who are going over there taking care of my 96-year-old white-skinned mother are these wonderful nephews of mine. And it's like, it's Meshuggah. We're all people. We're all people. And as Jews, we come from every race, every religion, every nationality, everything that you can think of. And I think that this really reflects who we are as a people, because we're supposed to be the priesthood of the nations. And if we're the priesthood, then it makes sense that we sort of look like the other people in the nations.
Jews look like where they're from.
Yeah, I think that is so very important. I'd misunderstood a certain story that I had heard that is really the story that sort of put the bee in my bonnet to get a hold of you and have you on here, but I found out that it actually was not your story. It was a story that you're aware of, but it was not your personal story. But in America today, we have a lot of racism. After the 60s and the 70s and the civil rights struggles and white people coming around to realize Martin Luther King Jr. for the absolute genius that he was, I thought we were getting better. And I think we were getting better. But then we elect the first, and we don't want to do politics here. But then we elect the first African American president, and I'm thinking we've made it. And all of a sudden, race issues blew up, and it's gotten like almost never before since the 60s or 50s. And it is so heartbreaking to me, because I really thought we had gotten beyond this nonsense. Not that things were perfect, but at least you knew people were wrong when they said these things.
I always had an interesting take on that whenever people were shocked by instances of racism, and they would point to the 60s as like, we thought we finished that. I think people forget that when you're looking at those things from the 60s, those protests, go back to where you came from, go home, there are children also in those photos, also holding those signs, also at those protests. They grew up. They're the ones that are in charge of institutions. They're the ones that are having children now. They didn't They didn't stop learning those things at home just because the Civil Rights Act got signed. They didn't stop learning those things. Their parents didn't stop teaching them those things just because, segregation was no longer a thing. They've always been there. They just hid in the background.
That's true. I worked as a collections a financial guy at a free clinic in Berkeley a number of years ago, and I had been out of Georgia by that point for many years, living in Berkeley, California. And I'm so proud of my open-mindedness, which is all nonsense. As you get older, you realize all this stuff is crazy. But we had an African-American man one time came into the clinic, and a man who was more towards the egotism of thinking he knew it all than I was at the time, I guess you'd say, knew that I was from Georgia, and my accent used to be stronger than it is now. I sort of worked to try to mellow out my accent. Said to this black man, he said, well, I bet you're really happy to be out here in California and away from all that racism in the South. His answer absolutely blew me away. And I'd like your comment on this. This is not the main topic, but I think his comment was, in the South, I knew where I stood. If someone didn't like me, they told me they didn't like me. And I dealt with it however I needed to deal with it. But out here, where everybody says that we're all equal, people keep lying to me and stabbing me behind my back. They're just as racist out here. They just know how to pretend that they're not.
I think that is also an amazing allegory that dovetails into the story you're about to tell. Where in a lot of my writing, where I talk about, issues of race and racism that have happened, like Jews of color in spaces, a lot of the response back is, oh, that's because you're Orthodox, you're living in Orthodoxy, things are better here, and more liberal forms of Judaism. That's exactly the conundrum of the Mason-Dixon line. It's the same racism on both sides of the line, just one manifests differently.
Right.
It's the same question. You're both asking, what are you doing here in this Jewish space? It's just that in Orthodox spaces, they just say it. In liberal spaces, it's like, oh, so what's your story?
Right.
What brings you here? How did
my mother grew up? We grew up eating kugel in my house. What did your mother feed you?
Exactly.
That's what I've heard a bunch of times.
Question.
So, if you would then, so tell us this story, because we as Jews want to think that, because we were right there with Dr. King. I mean, we are not racist. We are yada, 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 right?
May I?
Hang on here just a second. This story that you're about to tell us after we hear Donald's comment coming in here, this story broke my heart. And I would love if you would narrate it to us as soon as Donald, who I did not welcome as I usually do. Donald, I apologize for that. This is Donald Willinger, who is my regular co-host on all of these shows. Donald.
I just, first of all, welcome. And secondly, I would like to encourage everyone in the room to hit that share button, hit Facebook, and if you have Twitter, etc., and let your friends know that we have a special guest. This is a 2-hour live show. And
you cut off, Donald.
Okay.
You cut off.
I know.
Right? Okay.
Okay. What happened was Jesse called me.
Okay.
Anyway, go ahead and I wanted to go ahead and make that comment up front so that everybody, if you could take an extra minute for people to join us that might see everyone else post the share button, I would appreciate it, because I think that he has a story we all want to hear.
Thank you for that, Donald. I appreciate it. By the way, we have had several more people joining us now on the chat screen, including Veronica Port. Veronica says, well, to Stephen, if our foundation is that we are still shell binding the luminous vibratory sparks of the universe, how then can there be any distinction between two individual Jews? I think that's an excellent case. We've been talking about this lately as far as the sparks and that kind of stuff. Sparks are like, I don't even know how you would describe a spark. What color is a spark? I mean, sparks have no, we transcend all of these type of, that's a great point.
Yeah, but he has already 2 strikes against him. We only have 1. were Jews.
Well, speak
He
for
has two.
yourself.
He's a Jew and he's black. So he
Yeah, but
really
try, but
has.
try,
And I'm Orthodox. It's
right,
three.
right.
And
Yeah,
That's
there's
what I was gonna
three.
say.
Rabbi,
But
that's four. Like
we're
New
hostage.
Yeah.
Yorker, it's five.
We're all hostage. That's a big mark against you, according to a lot of
And,
people.
and then,
I got a
of
southern
course, he has
accent.
not
That's a
told you, Rabbi, but he should. Okay. I told him once he got his shmika, he would work harder. And he said, "Oh, no, I'm doing everything I would do." Look at him now. He
Wrong.
is.
He always holds that over my head. Guy says, I look at the person, good and bad, throughout the world, good and bad, not by any color. That's the way to do it. All right, so Slow Motion Silverman, his actual name is Shlomo. He started calling himself Slow Motion so that people wouldn't get confused between us at the House of Seven Beggars, our synagogue, which I really did appreciate. But Slow Motion is the one who introduced me to MaNishtana.
Yep,
MaNishtana, I think I got it.
you got it.
And which I truly am grateful. But Shlomo had also told me another story that he is familiar with, but I had misunderstood who it applied to. But nonetheless, as I said a moment ago, this story it says a lot. So if you wouldn't mind, please share that story with us.
Firstly, it takes place in Crown Heights. So when I heard the story, I was unsurprised because I grew up in Crown Heights before, during, and after the riots. So the stew of racial tensions that exist there was completely expected. At any rate, this happened to a colleague of mine, Yehuda Webster, works for JFRED, Jews for Racial and Economic Justice. And he's also like a bat mitzvah sort of trainer and tutor. And so he usually sort of rents a Torah scroll from a Judaica shop, has it over like Shabbat, then like brings it back, the next Sunday or so. So he's walking down. He lives in Crown Heights. He's walking down the block. I believe it's Eastern Parkway. It's probably Eastern Parkway. And he's a black guy, tall black guy, dark skin, Jewish. And one of the neighborhood Lubavitchers asks him what he's doing with the Torah scroll. To which he replies, "I don't have to answer that question because you're not some authority that I need to answer to just because you're walking down the street." And the guy insists, "No, you need to explain yourself. Like why you have this Torah scroll." So he continues to not explain, as is his rights, because it's not the 1890s. You need to have like your freedom papers on you. And goes over to like his Uber that he's called, and so he gets into the Uber. But by now a crowd is gathered, and one of them pulls their car in front of the Uber so it can't pull out, and everyone's surrounding the car. His roommate comes out, who's white and Jewish, and saying no, he tries to explain like the scenario, but no one's listening at that point. And then finally the police come by and clear everything out, and he's able to like go on with his day. But that was an insane experience that was completely infuriating to me. But he handled it with magnificent grace and patience, which I'm very aware that I would not have had in such a scenario. And that's what happened.
Can you imagine a white guy? We shouldn't think of ourselves as white guys, but can you imagine a lighter complexion person going and picking up a Torah scroll and taking it somewhere and having any of this happen? I mean, if you look like me, if you had the beard and the whole thing, can you imagine this possibly ever happening? I can't even, that would be such an offense to the Torah scroll that's being carried, let alone the person carrying the scroll. Can you even imagine such a thing happening? So
No.
Why is it, and I know this is you can't answer this question anymore than you can answer the question why people don't like Jews, but why is it that there is such racism within our own family? Why is that?
One, I would say cognitive dissonance. Like every year we celebrate Purim, which talks about how the Jews that lived from India to Ethiopia escaped getting killed. Yet we close the Megillah, and I guess we think those communities of Jews and Jews that look like that stopped existing once we close the book. we say that Jews were scattered to the four corners of the earth, but apparently we just think the four corners of Europe.
It was Eastern Europe.
So all these little bits and pieces, and then
Wow.
absorbing racism from our Christian and Muslim neighbors, and then propagating it and continuing to espouse it. Um, Taking an interesting interpretation of the curse of Ham while ignoring other texts that say the exact opposite.
What a Has anyone else in the room lost sound? Can you still hear us? Ahuva says she's lost sound. If you can hear us, would you please just say, I hear you? We moved to YouTube a while back because Facebook Live kept having these problems. We haven't had them. Veronica says she hears us. So
Okay.
thank you, Veronica. I appreciate that. I think it's just, I think this is probably on Ahuva's end. I'm sorry.
Yes, because I hear you very clearly on both.
Okay. I didn't mean to cut you off, Rabbi. I just,
No
if
problem.
they're not hearing you, I don't want you to waste your time because I want you to retell the story. Shlomo says, I can hear you on Google Hangouts, but YouTube says an error has occurred. Try again later. Huh. I hear
Interesting.
all three.
I hear you perfectly clearly, and I'll tell you what I'll do is I'll feed it back to you here so that you can hear it. And that's what you're hearing.
Okay, all right. Hoover says she's okay now, too. Some kind of weird glitch. This stuff happens. So, let's backtrack just a step for the people who may have joined us late. Now, by the way, that you can watch us on television as well as your computers. We don't necessarily see everybody that comes in. We pretty much decided we usually have about twice as many people here as we can see in the room. We're up to about 18 people in the room now, from what I'm getting. So your dad converted back, what, in the 60s, 50s?
70s.
Back in the 70s. Your mom's side of the family, however, has been Jewish since like 1800s or something, you said?
1780s.
1780s. Okay. So that's a pretty good pedigree. So you grew up in a Jewish home. You grew up with all the traditions. You grew up thinking of yourself, I'm a Jew.
Because I was.
Because you were, and you are. What does it feel like to grow up in a Jewish family, with your Jewish traditions, going to the synagogue, I mean, all the stuff that every other Jew does, and then as you start getting older, you start hearing things, and you're not really Jewish because you're black. You're not this because you're that. How does that feel? What does that do to your sense of who you are as a Jew? And how prevalent was it?
Those are all very interesting questions. I can't say it. Well, I can say what it did for me as a Jew. I was not really Jewishly active in things well into college. Like, I mean, sure, I went to like the synagogue for like Sabbath and festivals and holidays, and pray 3 times a day. Late to fill in war talit, but beyond that, beyond the things that I needed to do because God said so. Like, no, don't invite me to like your random Purim party or your Hanukkah this or your Sukkot that. I'm not really interested in interacting with you in the other spaces that God doesn't say, hey, you need 9 other guys. So that is how it affected me Jewishly for a while until about college. For other people, other Jews of color that I know, it's turned them off completely. As part of an interview for the New York Times back in 2010, I think it was me and Wylov Yitz Jordan, who was at the time an Orthodox, Black Jewish rapper, and a line that he said, a quote that like stuck with me and still is very true, is that a Jew of color child is a lot less likely to grow into a Jew of color adult.
Oh, that's just sad.
Just because of these experiences. And it's very easy for that to happen. And I think if I didn't go to public school the entire way through, I didn't go to yeshiva because my parents were like, yeshiva in the 80s, terrible place to raise uh, a child who was not white and Jewish. Terrible experience. And so growing up in uh, predominantly, non-Jewish African American public school spaces, one, it allowed me to build the strength to sort of defend or stand behind like my Judaism, like this is what I am, like everyone else is there, but this is who I am and what I am. And on the other side, I was able to build a healthy sense of like physical like pride and worth, like other people that look like me, and you're one of us in that way. But either way, it was an experience of one group saying, you're not one of them, you're one of us, or you're not one of us, you're one of them. Um, and that's how that went, I guess.
Speak a little bit more about why going to yeshiva would have been such a terrible experience.
Um,
We would think that's the one place where a Jew of color should be safe and should. Why was that so bad?
I've never gone. I have friends and colleagues who have gone, and there are horrific horror stories out there of the things and abuses that they underwent in yeshiva, racially based.
That's just sad. That's sad.
People, teachers saying that they couldn't have possibly gotten a high score on a Talmud test without cheating because they were dumb Sephardi.
I want to comment on this because it's interesting. You just said Sephardi, and I think you would have had less trouble Sephardi than Ashkenazi simply because you had that German base, which was the white, blue-eyed. What did they call them? I forgot the name. Aryan.
Aryan.
Yes. Okay. And in the Sephardic movement, which I'm a part of all my life, we had Chinese Jews, we had black Jews, we had Italian Jews, but the predominant was Hispanic Jews, the Spain from Spain, which is where my family oriented. So you had very dark colored people, and you had very olive colored people. And this was part of it. But part of what he faced, which is something we did not face so much being Sephardi, is that you would hear, and I know because I have run into this, you will hear somebody say when it came to a black person, oh, many of my, I have several friends who are black, some of my best friends. And then you hear the other racial comment, which is, I have several close friends who are Jews, It's the same thing. But we run into this more in the Ashkenazi because of what the German movement did. I mean, in the Ashkenazi, than you did in Sephardi, because Sephardi, we ran from that as best we could till we ended up in Poland. Would you not agree with that, Rabbi?
That's a really good point.
I
Sorry.
would say there. Oh, which one?
I forgot you're a rabbi too.
I'm sorry. I'm used to addressing when we do What's Now. I have usually just Rabbi unless we have a special guest.
Right.
This is the first to have a special guest that is Rabbi unless it's Rabbi A. And I say, hi, Rabbi A.
We have Moshe Shulman. We've had a few.
That's right. Yeah, we have had, haven't we?
Yeah, but I would be interested in your response, though, Rabbi.
I think that can go one of two different ways. One, it can go in the more accepting way, but in the fun way that colorism works, it can go even worse than in Ashkenazi spaces because there is such a collection of dark skins among Sephardi culture. There, at sometimes, is even more virulent anti-black racism to sort of delineate, at least we're not those guys. So it can go either one of those two ways. Either it's going to be better than an Ashkenazi experience or worse than an Ashkenazi experience.
Isn't that so often the case? It's like, at least I'm not those guys. That, I think, is a critical component to why racism, anti-Semitism, sexism, whatever ism you want to talk about, people don't feel good about themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And if I can say I'm not one of those guys, whoever those guys are, I look better. If I'm only here and you're here, at least I'm not there.
Yep.
That's you hit on a very deep truth there. I probably should have mentioned, by the way, I'm Breslaver and Sephardic. Most of the people who are regulars with us are Sephardic. Some are Ashkenazi. Some just simply don't identify. And I'm the associate rabbi of the House of Seven Beggars of Rabbi Ariel Nachman ben Chaim. We were the first full online Jewish synagogue. And we refer to ourselves as being simply, quote, traditional Jews.
Mm-hmm.
We avoid any type of separation of movements or sects or whatever. But that's just so you know who we are. That's sort of who we are.
I am interested in asking a very profound question of both of you. Do you find yourself, and Rabbi Shlomo, I'll ask you the same question. Do you find that you know how in a male culture here in America, we see the women being paid lower wages than men in these? Well, now let's take this to the rabbinical end. Does a rabbi who is black have to work harder to obtain their shmika than a white guy, you see, or a Latin guy, or any other group? Because there is so much discrimination in this country. If you're not white in this country, that can be a real detriment. You know this out in Alabama. You see it out there, Rabbi, and you see it in Atlanta, Georgia, if you're Jewish. And you run into all of these problems. So I'm asking you, and I'm not, MaNishtana? Is that close enough, Rabbi?
He's worse
That's
than
close
me.
enough.
If your name were Ladino, I could pronounce it with no problem. Change your name.
It's just MaNishtana together as one word.
Once I looked at it and you emphasized ma, I figured it out because it makes total sense. MaNishtana makes total sense.
But anyway, do you find that a challenge to you that you have to work harder than let's say a white rabbi or a woman rabbi? That now we don't in our traditional. You're not going to have, I don't think, too many female rabbis. But do you find obtaining shmika to be more difficult?
I don't know if I've found obtaining smicha to be more difficult. I do find navigating having smicha to be slightly more work than other people might have.
If you go to a hospital or some similar thing like that, and I don't know if you do this actually, but you have, this is sort of off of Donald's question, you need to present your qualifications as a rabbi to perform something. Do you notice people raising their eyes and saying, "You're a rabbi"? Do you ever do you get
I
that?
notice that in regular conversation. I
Yeah.
don't need to be involved in a official capacity to do
No,
that.
that's probably true. Yeah.
I okay, go. It was my daughter running by. I run a small like neighborhood congregation for like a Shabbat minyan where I live in Rockland County, and we have like new people or guests come in like to help pad our numbers sometimes, and when they come in and I get introduced as a rabbi, there's always a really Tim.
Right.
So that's always interesting. Or they go around to who they think he is the rabbi because he's the oldest looking or most official looking white guy in the room. He's like, oh no, I'm just a regular congregant. That's the rabbi. So.
Right. Yeah. Shlomo Silverman notes that the House of Seven Beggars, which is our synagogue, he's a member. He's a member of the House of Seven Beggars also. We have recently associated ourselves as a congregation with the chief rabbi of the Dominican Republic, and opened up a yeshiva with him, which our rabbi and is the co-rosh along with the chief rabbi of the Dominican Republic of our new yeshiva. He notes that out and suggests that our esteemed guest should become part of the Beit Din of our yeshiva. I would love it. It's not really my position to make such determinations in the yeshiva, although I am in the yeshiva and I'm one of the people there. And but I would actually like to talk with you a little bit after we're off here. But if you have the time and the interest, I know there is sometimes issues, especially since your Smika is with Chabad. There are cross-movement issues that we confront sometimes, but I would like to talk privately to you about that, though. You would love our rabbi, and he would love you. So we'll talk about that a little bit privately after the broadcast, perhaps. But Shlomo, I think that's a great idea. Stephen tells us that his TV is wired to the computer, so we've been on the big screen for quite a while. Shlomo says our chief rabbi is from. Oh, actually, one it's read. And just putting it out there publicly, I also endorse him. Yeah, Shlomo was just singing your praises, and I'm thinking, well, I haven't really managed to connect with you, but I'm pretty sensitive to sort of feeling people out. And I think I endorse you as well, even though we haven't really talked. I'm pretty impressed.
I'm a married man.
Not like that.
I
My
do
wife
want
is
to.
sitting here next to me. I wouldn't have said that publicly if that was the case. Donald, go
I
ahead.
would like to ask both of you on the discrimination issue, whether it be Jew, whether it be race, no matter. Do you find, as I do, that the better educated the person is, the less we see discrimination? Do you experience that, both of you?
The less educated the person is, the less they
No,
discriminate.
the more educated they are, the less discrimination I see.
That's another one of those polarizing things where either they're less or they're more because they can intellectualize themselves into a position of why their thoughts are right.
Yeah, I would have to say if I was going to answer the question, I'd have to say I don't agree with that. There's an awful lot of highly educated people with PhDs and doctors running around who are total racist, who are total anti-Semites and that kind of thing. I just was theoretically invited to apply for a position at the local university, and when they found out I was Jewish, that was fine. But that I believe in Judaism, I was sort of disinvited to apply. Yeah, I couldn't agree with that statement, Donald. Actually,
it's interesting.
It's the salt of the earth people, to my experience, who tend to say we all have issues. What kind of person are you?
Well, I guess I'm caught between that dilemma because the vast majority of my close friends are Jewish. So I don't, we never discuss anything racial or anything else. And in growing up, I was taught that no matter where you went, there's going to be a Jew. Now, that's how I was raised. We hear today, of course, in the Islamic countries, in many of them, you're not going to find a Jew. And then we hear stories like Iran. Oh, yeah, we have a Jewish community. And then Egypt has a Jewish community. And then we find out there's one in Syria,
Yeah, but they tend to exist in one big city or maybe two big cities. The countryside, you very seldom see them. It's like here in the United States, we're in Chattanooga. There's Jews here. But as far as being able to see someone on the street and saying that person's obviously Jewish, there's very few here.
Well, I still remember
Crown Heights, they're everywhere.
I still remember at 15 calling a TV store and asking for the owner of the store. I got him on the telephone and invited him to a Yom Kippur service, and he said, "Who told you I'm a Jew? Who told you?" They did not tell people they were Jewish. And of course, I didn't grow up that way. I was very proud to be a Jew. So that's why I asked that particular question, because the people that I do associate with obviously are more educated than that are Jewish. These are doctors, lawyers, and people affiliated. And you mentioned Chabad, and I'm happy you're connected to Chabad, because I am also very connected to Chabad, but I'm not a Chabadnik. And never will be.
Likewise.
Because,
Best way to be.
I would
Oh, I've
actually
been
agree
at
with.
770, as
I
he
would tend
found
to
out.
agree with that one. Yeah.
Yeah, we had a guest on the show that said, "Hi, Donald, when are you coming back to 770?" The rabbi goes, "You didn't tell me you were at 770." I said, "You didn't ask."
Donald has many friends in high places. That's all I'm going to say about that. But Donald has many friends in high places. Some people, they talk and you think, yeah, right, okay, you're just a name dropper. No, he knows all these people because he's introduced me to a whole bunch of them. So, like I said, so I would like to go to another topic that I'm not sure is quite fair, but I really would like your sense on this. I've got a few hundred. Oh, by the way, I should. Well, no. Anyway, Donald made a statement earlier that made me think maybe I shouldn't have said what I said about my nephews. It's like, well, I have my best friend is black, my best friend
So
is
my
Jewish.
best nephews are black.
I honestly was not intending that. But when Donald said that, I think, well, thank you, Donald. I just said that's going to make me look bad. My point was just simply that we're one people. Um, but
Amen.
but we all have a lot. Well, several of us, including Donald, we have a lot of friends on Facebook who are in Africa,
Mhm.
and a lot of the Africans, I get probably 15 or 10 or 15 PMs a day from my African friends asking me questions. I got one this morning, for instance. I know he's not here, so I'm not going to identify him, but he said, "Is it okay for us to take showers on Shabbat?"
Mhm.
I know that many of these people are self-defined Jews.
Mhm.
Halakhically, however, they're not Jewish because there's not much of a Jewish establishment in Israel with Beit Dins and stuff, other than Chabad, who is in some of the countries, like there's one in Kenya that I've actually talked to the rabbi there a couple of times. But they tend to be sort of closed-doored, and they're just really looking for existing Jews. They're not really reaching out to the local communities. What do you do with a situation with people who genuinely want to be Jewish and you genuinely respect the fact that they're doing these Sabbath things and they're doing these Jewish things and all this? They're not halakhically Jewish. They're not in a place where they can just go to the corner synagogue or even go to the capital city and convert. How do you deal with that? And to your experience, in a general sense, are these Africans like the Igbo Jewish? I mean, how do you deal with these kind of issues? Because without appearing like, I don't want to look like a racist. I don't want to look like a whatever. But they're not halakhically Jewish. Your thoughts on that? I would love.
My thoughts on that begin with how are we determining that we know that they're not halakhically Jewish? And that's something very difficult to determine in some cases, not all cases, in some cases when it comes to Africa, simply because those Jews didn't absorb into the countries that won history. So there's no documentation, there's no detailed records that have been, kept and subsumed for Jews that were absorbed into from parts of, say, the Roman Empire or into Europe or Poland and all those places. They have an easier time tracing because they're part of the powers that won history. So their writings survive and their migration patterns survive, and everything they did is there and taught as history.
Rabbi MaNishtana,
Hang
can
on a
I?
second. No, hang on a second. I really want
We
to hear
find Torahs in Africa.
Donald, please hang on. I really want to hear his answer for this one.
So for those that migrated into ones that didn't so much win history or to lesser degrees, it's a lot more assumption to assume that they're not halakhically Jewish when they could just as easily be.
When you look at like the Igbo people, I'm sure you're familiar with the Igbo, right?
Well, there's different kinds of Igbo.
Well,
There are
that's
the
true. Yeah,
Igbo that believe that they're Jewish, and there are the Igbo that don't believe that they're Jewish.
right. That's true.
And
That's
among
true.
the Igbo that do believe they're Jewish, their story of how they're Jewish follows the exact same migration pattern as Ethiopians. Through the Middle East, through Yemen, through Ethiopia, only the Igbo kept going into Nigeria.
Sure, sure. That's a
And
good
if we're
point.
going to go halachically, there is the halacha. If someone says that they're Jewish, then we believe them. The only time that we don't believe them is when they themselves had said that at some point they didn't used to be Jewish and now they're Jewish again.
Okay, what do you do though if they say my mother was a Christian because or a Muslim because of forced conversions or fear or whatever, but I know that we have a family lineage that's Jewish. They
Then
ask,
halachically, they would have to have a gerut l'chumer. They'd have to have a pro forma conversion
see, and that's
because
my
they themselves are saying that at some point they weren't Jewish
and
and now
that's
they are again.
yeah, that's the point with a lot of these people. Like Donald, like I'm sorry, Donald, I cut you off a moment ago, but like I think Donald was going to say that they have these ancient Torah scrolls. They do
Mhm.
things the way that we do them. They say things the way that we say them. They sound Jewish, like the Cherokee people here in the United States sound clearly like they've got a Jewish history back there.
And some of them do have, but it's gone paternal, like the Lemba.
Mm-hmm.
They have the same DNA modal haplogroup among their priestly clan as every other Cohen and every other Jewish ethnicity.
Right.
So yes, obviously at some point they were Jewish and they were from priestly clans. However, they got absorbed into an African society that was paternal, and so they might not be halakhically. There might be some that actually are still halakhically Jewish, but the majority there might not be. So it requires a lot more uh, nuance and inspection, and to divest ourselves from as much as the Eurocentric version of what Jewish lineage and community looks like is when interacting with these kind of communities.
Yeah. Okay, Donald, please ask your. Go ahead now. You wrote your question here, but go ahead. I really wanted to hear that complete line of
Well,
thought that he was
I
following.
think he answered that, but I don't know that I necessarily want to totally agree because we do find a lot of artifacts in Africa that are Jewish. We find a lot of artifacts that have been discovered with the Cherokee tribe, and there are many Cherokee who believe they are Jewish.
Mm-hmm.
It presents a very difficult problem that I can visually see because as once again I was raised with the belief that no matter where you went in the world, there's a Jew. Maybe not a practicing Jew, but
Mm-hmm.
there's a Jewish heritage there, and so that's why I asked that. I guess you might say a profound question. I don't know, but I think it was certainly an appropriate question of both of you,
Yeah.
because both of you have. Now, of course, you don't know Rabbi Shlomo yet. This man has a degree in religion that's phenomenal, and he's certainly been through all of the various religions and looked at them and everything. But we come up with this fascinating question to me, which is, can anybody explain then how all these artifacts ended up in Africa, including Torahs, how they ended up in the Cherokee tribe in America? There's got to be something behind all of this, rabbis.
A related question, and I get your response to him as well, is the Africans who, by the way, I totally agree. Some of them absolutely are Jewish as far as heritage goes. I have no question about that. I've never had a question about that. But the origins of these people, some of them say that they believe that they are of one or another of the lost tribes. Others
Mm-hmm.
say that they are the descendants of David and Bathsheba.
Mm-hmm.
Others have different. What's your take on how these people emerged from our people, like after the first temple was destroyed or whatever? In your opinion, how did they get where they are at now in Africa?
Meaning what?
Meaning, like, if when people intermarry, they can have radical changes in their physical makeup after a generation or two. We know
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't take long at all. A very black person marries a very white Scandinavian, the child is going to sort of be tannish. That's a stupid way of saying it, but their kids, if they marry a white person, may be white, or if they marry a black person, may again look very black. It doesn't take long to change physical characteristics. But So I'm not so much interested in the color, but the history of how the Jews got into Africa as a general statement or as a collection of all these things. How did they get to Africa from presumably Judea and Samaria?
Um, that one is slightly easier to answer. We see in Tanakh and Deuteronomy where you're talking about the laws of kings, and one of the commandments is to not have too many horses, because that would require, sending Jews back into Egypt, because Egypt was the largest breeder of horses historically at that point, to bring back horses, and so then Jews would then resettle in Egypt. Um, and once you're there in Egypt, Ethiopia and Nigeria in either direction, you're just a hop, skip, and a jump away.
Right.
So Ethiopians we've seen have been there since the first or second temple. I can't remember which one, but they've proven to have been there since that time. That's just one way it could have happened. Trade routes. That's how you have the Jews that ended up in Kaifeng in China, the Jews that the B'nai Menashe and the Cochin Jews in India, the Jews all along the routes into other parts of Asia and again down to Africa. So it's not extremely hard to, I would think, to track how it happened.
That's my typical answer when people ask me that question, too. I don't think you can say they are of this group or that group. I think it is just a natural migration. We used to be called the wandering Jews because of anti-Semitism or politics or economics, we were wandering everywhere. And when you met the local community, you fell in love with somebody, you did whatever you did, and you have babies. I mean, it's just, we merged everywhere. Stephen Ewing says something which we as a congregation also totally believe. Stephen said, I heard somewhere that if someone comes to your community with a claim of being Jewish, that they should be accepted on that basis as long as they appear to be on the direct, so to speak. The policy of the House of Seven Beggars is that if someone comes to us telling us that they're Jewish, we don't challenge them. Because we're an online synagogue, we don't have to deal with people coming up for aliyahs and that sort of a thing. But if a person repeatedly is unfamiliar with things that are sort of basic concepts, it might eventually raise some questions. Well, are you really Jewish? Because most Jews know what the Shema is or whatever. But that's our policy, and that typically is my policy. So back to my earlier question with that in mind. So if someone writes me and they're from Africa or wherever they're from, and they say, what's the halakha about showering on Shabbat for us? Should I just assume that you are in fact Jewish, or should that be challenged? Because if I give information, this is the halakha for Jews, and you're not Jewish, I'm giving inaccurate information. Because that's often different than that for Noahides, which I would consider most of the people I'm talking about to be if they're not Jewish.
Well, if they're asking that question, then they're likely also doing other things that are, I guess, in violation of traditional Shabbat, so that there's no danger there of them, like, completely observing Shabbat. But on the other hand, they might have just grown up in a background that didn't know that it wasn't okay to shower. Like, say, my wife grew up Reform. She would have that same question, was of showering on Shabbat, and she's Jewish.
Right.
They might have heard differing opinions, whether they had an Ashkenazi or a Sephardi opinion. They might have heard the opinion that it's okay to shower even in warm water as long as your arm is outside the shower, so you're not bathing all your body at the same time, which is the actual.
I've heard that one, yeah.
So they might just actually be legitimately asking the question because they want to know what the actual answer is, or it might have been the first time they heard something.
So you should give them the benefit of a doubt.
Yeah.
It is sort of insulting. Well, in fact, like your friend with the Torah scroll realized, it is sort of insulting when you consider yourself to be Jewish and someone assumes that you're not. But at the same token, you don't want to, if someone has been taught that they are Jewish when halachically they're not, because you can't just decide I like Judaism so I'm a Jew. You can't do that. This is
And
why
it
this
doesn't
is.
matter. It doesn't matter how many generations of people you've come from who've done that. You're still just not you.
Yeah, and so this is a really hard one to try to figure out how to deal with. But thank you for your answer, though. I really do appreciate that. So basically, I'm always talking about the importance of balance. Here's
Hmm.
another one of those things. We just have to view these things from a more balanced perspective. I think Stephen also says, "What would be points if the direct that?" Sorry, Stephen, but I'm reading this. What would be points if the direct that, if not being fulfilled, could justify not following the precedent? How would this affect the counting of a minion if there is no solid proof for being Jewish yet? Now, this is an important point because
Hmm.
if you join a synagogue, virtually always, unless they already really know, the synagogue is going to want evidence that you're Jewish. And
Hmm.
before they call you up to a minyan or count you in a minyan or call you up for the aliyah, they're going to want to know that you're Jewish, and they're going to ask for your certificate, your whatever. But they're going to want evidence that you are in fact Jewish.
Hmm.
It's a different thing if you're two people chatting. I mean, I would never, for instance, ask the rabbi here, give me proof that that'd be dumb. I mean, it would totally not appropriate. But in a situation where a rabbi is overseeing a congregation and has a legitimate need to know to preserve the congregation, that's a different matter. Um, but you're right, though, because we've had cases in Israel where there have been rulings that people who thought they'd been generations for a couple of, I mean, they'd been Jewish for a couple of generations, someone came up with evidence that their great grandmother wasn't halakhically converted. Maybe she converted Reform, and
Hmm.
so the Orthodox are not going to accept her, and so then they don't accept her kids who think they're
Hmm.
Jewish and are Jewish, in my opinion. But the halakha gets really problematic here. There's a lot of people being rejected as Jews who are really Jewish because of some of these issues. Any thoughts on that?
Um, halacha is very nuanced on this. I feel, and different. There are different combinations. It's really a case by case approach. Like they're the blanket sort of goalposts, but then it also comes into the individual circumstances of the case. What I think makes things complicated is particularly around rules of conversion and how the Israeli rabbinate decides to like revoke conversions and decide that these people aren't Jewish anymore or who isn't, which I think is extremely short-sighted and has no precedent
Thank you.
anywhere in
Thank you.
halacha.
I don't like that. Yeah.
It makes absolutely no sense. Just historically based, there's at least two or three groups of people who converted historically uh, that I can think off the top of my head, and they never had conversions revoked. It was like, okay, they did this thing, we're never like intermarrying with them ever again. But there's never, okay, now they're not Jewish.
Right.
And so, if those groups that did like horrible things were still considered Jews, we're revoking Jewish status from people who are doing much less than that. Also, where then is the room for growth? Once you're in Judaism, you're just locked in. People who are born Jewish, they have their ebbs and flows. They're more observant this, that, less observant, because that's just being a human person evolving and wrestling with your faith. But someone who converts, they're supposed to just lock into where they are and
Yeah. The
get
mikvah
to
is
wrestle
supposed
with
to
that.
be the beginning, not the end.
Exactly.
It's a birth canal. It's not a grave. Shlomo
Like,
Silverman has an excellent point. Shlomo says, is there a cutoff level of the number of mitzvot observances to determine who is Jewish? Rabbi Nachman of Breslov clearly states that mitzvot is a process of refinement.
I wouldn't say there was a cutoff number. I don't have a scoreboard. I don't know.
Uh, and we
I
know
would
that,
agree with that. There
yeah,
is no scoreboard. And the way I was raised, and I want to point this out to both of you, is that I, from childhood, was told that the only time I needed to prove that I was a Jew was if I got married or I got
Yep,
buried. That was the
that
only
is the
time.
actual halacha.
yep. So what
So
happens when
unless
you,
we're writing a ketubah, you actually there's no real reason. It's great to have maybe like little cautions around people who are They seem like a little off, or as they tell you more of their story, you're realizing maybe they aren't actually Jewish. But logically speaking, the only time that you actually need to investigate is if someone's getting married.
How about if they want to join your synagogue and you're the congregational rabbi?
Logically you have to check that, but it's probably wise to. And if you are checking, then you'd have a standard practice for everyone who joins that congregation.
Yeah, Rabbi Ariel Nachman ben Chaim, who is our Rebbe, says that actually, if you, and not in that context, that if you ask somebody to prove that they're Jewish, you're actually violating, I think he said 9 or 10 by his count. I forgot how many numbers it was now. But you're actually violating a number of halakhic requirements or prohibitions by even asking them and challenging them on that. And that's always been a question to me, because I know people who have converted through people that I consider to be absolutely solid rabbis in Beit Dinim who have done it beyond the requirement of the Shulchan Aruch, who have then gone to synagogues and been told, we don't accept your conversion.
Mm-hmm.
I got huge issues with that, but at the same time, you have to protect your community from non-Jews trying to sort of infiltrate the community. I mean, these are hard questions.
That doesn't happen terribly often. That
it's happening a lot more with Messianics, though. A lot of Messianics have done
Messianics. That's different. Yeah,
that's why so many of those conversions.
But a lot of those are actually Jewish, so then it's a moot point.
It's a moot point. Yeah, these are tough questions. That's a great comment, though, Shlomo. I appreciate that. I wish your question, Shlomo says my question is entirely hypothetical and almost sarcastic. I wish it was entirely hypothetical. It's not. We confront these things as rabbis.
I definitely have this issue as someone who's an African-American Jew, because there are different congregations of what's known as Hebrew Israelites.
I was going to bring them up. Yeah.
Where everyone just seems to have this one sort of concept of what a Hebrew Israelite is, and they're thinking of like the guys in the corner and like the funky Power Ranger outfits screaming on loudspeakers. That's only one. There's like 3 different denominations of Hebrew Israelites. There's that kind. They're the kind that like mix Judaism and Christianity, and then there's the kind that would practice, maybe if you just looked at them and didn't know that they weren't Jewish, like a conservadox synagogue. But they all still come from the same, we used to be Jewish, then we weren't, and now we're Jewish again. Or I felt Jewish, and so I started practicing, and that's how like my mother and grandmother and everyone did it, and so now we're Jews. And it's like, no, it's not the same thing. And what makes it even more problematic is when Jewish and other media sort of conflates the two of people who are African American or Caribbean or Black and practice Judaism, and this particular group of Black Americans who have come to identify with Judaism and practice it, but have never made any formal steps towards actually joining Judaism, and or say that it's unnecessary because they're have been and they're automatically Jewish and they're just reconnecting with something.
Yeah. I sort of equate them with like the Nation of Islam in America.
Well, that's actually, it's kind of the same thing. It's historically a rejection of Christianity post-slavery as sort of the slave owners and slaveholders' religion, and finding alternate religious expressions. So there are some that went towards Islam and created the Nation of Islam, which also is not a denomination of Islam. It's not one of the 73 texts, but it's based off it and has a very African nationalist identity. And then there's the Hebrew Israelites, which is the Jewish expression of that same process.
It's like one of the people I really respect a lot is Malcolm X, because Malcolm X was right into that Nation of Islam headset with all the anti-white stuff and all this stuff, and then he actually went to Mecca
became a Muslim
and became a real Muslim, and was actually rejected by the group. And when he did, he began teaching what, as a whole, Islam proclaims, which is the brotherhood of humanity, peace, joy, and that type of thing. It's always a minority of every group that gives the whole group a bad name. Most Muslims are peace-loving people. They're good monotheistic people who worship God according to their understanding. We differ with them doctrinally, but they're actually closer to us than, like, say, Christianity is, as far as belief systems and stuff goes.
Yeah.
That's a really good point. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. I like that answer a lot. David Brown has joined us. Hi, David. I'm glad that you're here. Hope Kat's with you today as well. David says that Hashem does the scoring.
Yeah.
It really is up to Hashem. In fact, I've been talking about a lot lately. According to, you can take anything too far, but according to our sages, every Jew who has ever lived or ever will live, including all converts, were personally present at Mount Sinai and received the Torah at Mount Sinai from the hands of Moshe Rabbeinu. And in the Torah, when the people say, all that is there we will do and understand, in that order, that's who the Jews are. And so if you were not, you may not remember it, but if your soul in some sense was not at Sinai to be incorporated into the covenant, you really aren't Jewish. And if you were there, then you are Jewish by sense of the covenant. And so what conversion is a local movement, a local Beit Din, a local group, or what have you, or an international body declaring we accept that you've come back into the fold. Mm-hmm. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that. And I would also like to add another point on top of that. When we talk about Jews and Jews' ethnicity and what Jews look like, Jews were a multiracial, multi-ethnic group that, from the moment of Sinai, sure, you have the children of Israel, but they weren't Jews yet. There wasn't any Judaism. Then you had all the mixed multitude that came out with them from Egypt. They all became Jews at the same time at Sinai. So when the Jews started, they were already a multi-ethnic, multiracial people.
Yep, absolutely. I say that, and that 100% agree with you. Dennis Acola has joined us. Dennis is a really great Noahide friend of mine, and he's got the knowledge of a rabbi. I mean, Dennis is amazing. Dennis says, and this is a good point, and I want to ask you a follow-up question on this. Dennis says, many black Israelites say that, quote, white Jews stole the black Jewish history. What do you think about that?
I think that's highly erroneous.
You think the statement is erroneous?
The statement's erroneous because Jews, again, you can find everywhere. There is a preponderance of European Judaism as being the most authentic Judaism, or the Judaism, or the bar that other Jewishes should be measured by. I like to use the term Ashkenormativity.
Ooh, I like that.
But that Jews who are white stole Judaism from Judaism or brown is just fallacious.
Oh, that's fallacious.
Historically, genetically,
but
migrationally, in all those ways.
But many of the Hebrew Israelites are teaching that, right?
Yes.
Okay. I thought that's what you were saying, what you didn't agree with. So many of these people are teaching, and this one is, I'm going to ask a question. I really would be interested in your opinion. There's pretty much no way, but like you said, actually, we were a multiracial group. But Avraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov almost certainly did not have white skin.
Absolutely not.
In my opinion, they almost certainly didn't have black skin. I have been told they were more probably like the modern-day Arabs, in my opinion, as far as complexion.
I would say they're slightly darker than that, just based on the fact that everyone was hanging out in the Fertile Crescent and had just left Africa. So everyone is pretty much that same shade of brown that you see whenever you encounter a native tribe in any of these places, like the Aborigines in Australia or like the tribes in the rainforest. They're pretty uniform, really brown, that's darker than current Arabs.
Okay, I hear that. So this is where the next question comes from. Actually, I'm just going to ask you straight out, and then maybe we'll follow up on your answer. Where do you have a belief about the location of the original Gan Eden?
Not particularly, no.
Okay, because I've been told that by Hebrew Israelites. I've been told that it was absolutely in Ethiopia. The issue I see with that is that when the Torah describes the four rivers,
That's in Mesopotamia.
two of the rivers are in Mesopotamia. The Nile is in Egypt.
Yeah.
Right? Water tends to flow south. And so if the garden was watered from these flows, the water from the Euphrates and I forgot the Pishon, I think it is, would have flowed southward into Africa. Traditionally, we've always said that Gan Eden was probably south of the current city of Baghdad by a couple hundred miles or something.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on that? I don't know why it matters, but it seems to be a huge deal for some people.
I don't think it actually matters. If it ever did exist physically in that space, it doesn't now, and it's on a different plane. So
It doesn't matter.
it's not really it's really a moot point, I would think.
Yeah. I get you wouldn't believe, Rabbi. You would not believe the PMs and the letters I get. So,
I would believe them. You wouldn't believe the ones
I'm sure. I'm sure.
I've gotten some.
Yeah, I'm sure. I just like to sort of follow up and get other people's thoughts on these things. I think it almost had to be south of Baghdad, where it traditionally, more or less, where it traditionally been located. But at least by the Great Flood, if not before then, it's not there anymore. And so, does it actually make a bit of difference? I don't think so. So thank you for that. I think every rabbi I've ever asked, pretty much that's the sort of the standard answer. It doesn't matter, but I think it's probably there based on the description. But the flood, if we take it as described in the Torah, which not everybody does, was it a global flood or a major region? Everything's debated in Judaism, as you know. But can you imagine the earth changes that such an event would have made? The fact that anything would be still the same as it was back then seems pretty amazing to me.
I mean, that's one of the reasons why I say it doesn't really make any sense to try and date the Earth. Even though I have these are two different thoughts. This thought particularly, it makes no sense to try and date the Earth because the heat and the pressure and the shifting that happened during that 1 year of the flood, it's like if you took a piece of coal and artificially applied pressure to it, you'd still come out with the same diamond as a natural coal that sat there for thousands and billions of years. So try and carbon date the Earth from that perspective doesn't really make any sense unless there's some control Earth that a flood didn't happen on. You can compare these two samples to. But.
Yeah, totally agree. Stephen Ewing has a question for you on Hebrew Israelites. I think I know the answer from what you've already said, but Stephen says, since we're getting on that topic, how has that movement impacted your personal path? Or has it? I'm assuming it hasn't.
It definitely has, having to explain that I'm not a Hebrew Israelite, that the things that I don't believe in, and interacting with other Hebrew Israelites who call themselves Black Jews. When I say I'm Black and Jewish, like, oh, so you're like, no, that's not what I am. That's also not what you are. So can you kindly stop saying that you're me? It's been a very, there's nothing inherently wrong with the Hebrew Israelite movements or the people that practice it or believe in it. Just, I'm not a fan of how much we get confused, whether deliberately or just because of laziness on the part of media and journalism.
But you would say that there may be very well be Jews among them, but it's not a Jewish group.
It's not, but in large, it's not a Jewish group.
Yeah,
there are people grown up Israelite who have converted to Judaism. There are probably people who are logically Jewish in the Hebrew Israelite movement, but as the whole, it is not.
Okay, I would agree with that too. Yeah. I mean, not that my agreement is the be all end all, but I agree with you on that though. So David Brown asked, this is a good one. I learned that Sarah did not have, she had a womb, but I learned that Sarah did not have a womb. Yitzhak was a true miracle. Whenever Abraham knew his wife, a Jewish soul was made without a body. These souls became... actually, this is not the question I thought you were going to ask. Any thoughts on that question?
I'm not sure what the question is.
Let me read it again. I learned that Sarah did not have a womb, which I've never heard. Yitzhak was,
I have heard that. I've
you
heard
have
that
heard,
both Abraham and Sarah were both tombs,
huh?
so they had neither of the genitalia of men
Okay,
or women. And uh, after they got renamed, that's when they were
huh?
able to procreate.
All right. And Yitzhak was a true miracle because of that. So he was an immaculate conception. Whenever Abraham knew his wife, a Jewish soul was made without a body. These souls became converts.
I have not heard that last part.
Yeah, I haven't heard any of that part of it. That sounds. I would want to check that out more. That sounds odd to me, but I don't know a lot of things. So,
I know
Stephen,
the first part you can find in Torah Anthology Me'am Loez by Rabbi Yaakov Kuli. It was written in Ladino in the 1700s.
but why would that be? Because Abraham is in part who he became because he was a son of Eber.
Hmm.
Why? I don't understand the rationale why they would have been created. I mean, we're all about the earth and about being in harmony with the earth and the natural flows and things like immaculate conceptions is more stuff of like Indian and Greek
Oh, the
mythology.
Immaculate Conception I've never heard of either. I'm just talking about Abraham and Sarah not having the required equipment.
So that would explain why they never had children until their names were
Yes, and
changed.
why they had to pray for them.
I think it's a lot easier to just say that one or the other one of them was not fertile, but I don't know.
Jews and easy, that's a thing.
Well, yeah, you don't want that. Steven says salt to fill the shaker. Shlomo says with with MaNishtana being one of the most popular people to follow, he has the opportunity to do a lot of outreach in the advancement of reducing the racism within Judaism. Is there something that we as a group could do to assist you in the elevation of those sparks that you're doing? Oh, yes, I mistyped, he says. I follow you on Twitter, which I'm going to do as well. I don't think I'm following you on Twitter. I will do that too. Does Rabbi know Nissim, someone named Nissim?
Nissim Black?
Probably. He said, does Rabbi Ma know Nissim?
I do not personally know him. I know of him.
Okay. I
We
do
do
like
follow
that.
each other on Twitter.
Yeah, I do like that question, though. One of the things that that we are trying to do as a community of the House of Seven Beggars and of MyLearnaMooner.com and of our Karu Media Network and of everything that we're doing, we are trying to encourage, in part, non-observant Jews to come back home and to realize that you don't have to be some kind of a black hatter, fanatical person or whatever, perfectly frum, to be able to have a relationship with Hashem and to own your Jewishness and that kind of a thing. We are trying to reach out to people that feel alienated from the movement of Judaism. Is there anything that we could do to assist you in what you're doing? I don't quite see how we could, but if there is, I would love it.
um, Something that was said near the beginning of this podcast, I think. It was about sparks and how can we distinguish this, one Jew
Yeah.
from another with all these sparks.
Right.
I think that's a great sentiment, but I think it's ultimately harmful because sure, there might be the exact same divine spark across these things that we're supposed to be unlocking, but divine sparks exist in everything, and everything is not the same thing. There's a divine spark
True.
in a plate of chicken as the same as a divine spark in a plate of steak. But chicken and steak are two inherently different things. You have to, if you're going to make a Shabbat meal, to elevate those sparks out of those two things, you need to cook them different ways. You need to thaw them out different ways. You need to have different recipes for them. And Jews and people are just like that too. So yes, a Jew is Jew is a Jew. We all have sparks. How can you distinguish one Jew from another? Because the thing that's containing the spark is the different thing. And that's how you unlock that spark, by interacting with that spark in what it's contained in and unlocking it that way.
Very well said. Very well said. If there's one thing to me that's apparent, it's that Hashem loves diversity. This world is just so filled with glorious diversity, and each different thing brings glory to the Creator. I think that's a really good point there.
I can't remember which Rav said it, but the saying was that true oneness comes from diversity.
Right.
It doesn't come from identicality. It's just all the same thing. There's no growth there. There's no interactions, no spirituality there. What true oneness is, despite the diversity, there's still oneness.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's a lot of calls, which I find ironic when it comes from someone Jewish, against tribalism. But we come from a people of 12 distinct tribes, 12 distinct tribal identities and abilities and how they connect to Judaism and to God. Yet, nonetheless, they're still all Jews. They still all show up for like Pesach and for Shavuot, for Sukkot. They were all going to the Beit HaMikdash, despite having 12 separate identities and having that same divine spark as Jews. The same thing exists in our world today.
That's true. In fact, on that point, you had defined a Jew as that which was created by the people coming together at Mount Sinai. I agree with that, but I tend to think of it more along the lines that the Jews are the people who have Israel, that the Jews are the people of the houses of Judah and Samaria. And not Samaria, basically the people of Judah being the Jews, and that this is the house of Israel that survived for 3,500 plus years. But that once we're in the Olam Haba, all of this wonderful diversity of the 12 houses will again branch out, and Mashiach ben David will reveal to every one of us what tribe, what house we're actually of. And I think we're not going to all be the same. I think we're going to be an incredibly diverse group of people fitting for an incredibly diverse world.
Yeah.
Dennis Acola has a question on your opinion of the historicity of Gan Eden versus the spiritual fact of the physical Garden of Eden.
Historicity is very interesting when it comes to Tanakh because Torah was never meant to be a history book, at least not in Bereshit. It was a general glossing over of, okay, this is where man came from, and then this people, this family, okay, choose. Now we'll focus. So to look at it for historical accuracy in the way that we conceive of historical accuracy is already going to be a futile endeavor because that's not what it was ever meant to be. The second half of the question, what was it again?
What's basically the question is the historicity of Gan Eden versus the spiritual fact of Eden. So does there, I think what he's suggesting is, does there even have to have been a literal Garden of Eden, or could it be more of a spiritual concept? Do you accept the physical existence of an actual garden that was Gan Eden?
I would say at that point, I would believe in the physical existence of Gan Eden because at that point, sin hadn't happened. And so, like, God was here dwelling on the earth, as one sort of function or entity, I want to say. Then after, like the Midrash says, after each generation, the Shekhinah retreats further and further, a heaven up, a heaven up, a heaven up, a heaven up, until like the generations from like Avraham to Moshe bring it back down again to where Hashem's back on earth when the Beit HaMikdash is there. So I'm saying it's extremely possible that there was a physical Gan Eden physically on earth before the sin of Adam and Eve.
Yeah, that's my take as well. David Brown, by the way, is a great local friend as well as a person who I would love to see get his Smika. He and his wife Kat have a very direct tie going to the Cherokee people, and we talk a lot. They come to visit us about once a week, and we have a lot of wonderful conversations here. He says that he would love to personally help you in any way that he might be able to. We'd asked if there's anything we could do to help. David says the last part of the former statement was what I learned in response to why all converts carry the name Ben Avraham Avinu.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's very good. All right, any other questions for our guests, please feel free to ask them. I really do appreciate you being here with us today.
I appreciate you having me. It's been a great conversation.
So if a person, or actually, let me ask you a question about the greater political realities currently in the United States with Black Lives Matters, and we don't need to go to specific groups, but with all the diversity and all the craziness and all the accusations and all the white male bashing that's going on right now, what's the hope? Do we have a hope for this country? Is and as Jews and as a country, are we simply too divided that we're just never going to come together until Mashiach, or is there something we can do to sort of fulfill Dr. King's thing about people being judged by the content of their heart and not the color of their skin? We're in a
Ooh,
mess. It's a mess.
this is a mess, and this is going to sound very strange historically, but like, bear with me. Um, I'm not sure if it's capable at this point for Jews to come together unless some drastic upheaval happens. And I feel that the root of that is the denominational break, especially how it played out here in America. Um, I feel like in that break between orthodoxy and non-orthodoxy, um, there was what was originally just traditional Judaism. There wasn't any Orthodox or whatever, just Judaism. And the break created an Orthodox Judaism and a non-Orthodox Judaism. And so to delineate one from the other, these two denominations started defining themselves in negatives. Oh, non-Orthodoxy is doing this, moving more to the left. Orthodox is going to do this, move more to the right. And as each one moved further left and right, that neutral ground where they could have both inhabited and coexisted in, but didn't, so that there was clear lines between the two, just widened and widened and widened. And in recent years, with non-Orthodox denominations moving and swinging back more towards that neutral ground, more towards like textual study and different observances, Orthodoxy has continued to move more to the right than it needs to be or ever needed to be. And part of what gets sacrificed in that is that I like to say in the break that each one of those two sides picked one of the tablets. Like there's a famous midrash that you have the Ten Commandments, and on one tablet are the commandments between man and God, and the other tablet, it's the commandments between man and man. So Orthodoxy took the tablet between man and God. We're the better Jews because, we keep all the observances and all the religious, edicts and all those things. We're better Jews than non-Orthodoxy is. Non-Orthodoxy took the commandments between man and man. We're better Jews because we care about our fellow man. We're doing these social things, and we're better than those Jews over there. They only care about what's happening in their books. Except there are two tablets. So each side were just being equally as bad Jews. And at this point, everyone is so ensconced in their tablet being the one that there's little to no hope to them both realizing that you need both of those tablets and to come back together to that neutral ground. And I think that also plays out how the denominations express themselves politically. You'll have more non-Orthodox Jews in Judaism involved more in social issues and caring about things like immigration or like prison bail reform or taxes because they're invested between man and man. And on the Orthodoxy side, you're going to have less care in that because, it doesn't affect, my Shabbat. It doesn't affect me, going to shul. And so I'm not really sure how to, or if there is even a way to re-knit those two sides back together again.
I like that. That's a great answer. That's a great answer. According to the according to the Chafetz Chaim and many of our other great sages, um, the reason the second temple was destroyed was because not of our sins, not because of our weaknesses, but because of our infighting. It was each one of us criticizing, condemning each other, our side of the tablets. Um, and Rambam's description of what would bring the Messiah, or how we would know the real Messiah had come in his Laws of the Kings, is that he will heal the breaches in our observances. And I think it's going to take the Messiah to do that. I think maybe we can get closer if we really work at it, but I just don't see it going away, unfortunately, until the coming of Messiah. Um, um, Mary DeHart has another question or comment on Eden. She says, or could it be a Garden of Eden located in a higher dimensional plane instead of this physical earth? Adam and Eve having higher spiritual bodies and then cast down to the earth and having a lower, more physical body. We know that we refer to a celestial Gan Eden descending, which I think you referenced there. I don't know if you would have any thoughts on what she has said or not.
I don't think it's incongruent to any other concept of Gan Eden.
Yeah, I would agree. We have to be a little bit careful because it's easy to slip into Gnosticism when nothing physical is real. But I would agree with your answer, though. You're laughing. For a particular reason?
I'm agreeing with you.
Okay. It's these are a lot of these things. It's that we like to have black and white answers. We like to say this is what it is and it cannot possibly be anything else. But that's not a whole lot better than saying it doesn't matter what you believe as long as you believe. You got to find it's not always easy to find that balance. Our friend Muhammad Kamel has joined us, or at least I hadn't seen you before. Hi, Muhammad. I'm glad that you're here. Stephen says, what do you think the impact on unity of the Jewish people has been since the beginning, since the bringing about of the internet? Do you feel that the development of cross-movement communities through the internet, I think basically the point is, has the internet had a direct impact on either bringing us together or causing more separation? I think that's a great question.
I think it's just our generation's version of whatever social connection was happening in previous generations. Or it's not making us more or making us hate less. It's just the way that we connect. Personally, I can definitely say the internet was extremely huge in creating at least a virtual community of Jews of color. That, like, you weren't really connected to Jews of color beyond anyone that might have lived within a 10-block radius of you, which generally wasn't a lot. But I very much specifically remember in MySpace days that all of a sudden, like, there were Jews of color everywhere, and we were friending each other, and they would look through each other's friend lists, and everyone was just friending any other Jew of color and any other Jew of color's friend lists, and it just created this online community and groups that have continued a lot into real life, continued over into Facebook, continued into, like, a lot of the people I interact with now and as colleagues or as authors or writers or speakers. I've met a lot of them way back in MySpace days where we were just connecting, looking out for, trying to find other Jews of color. So I would very definitely say, I guess I would say it had helped bring us together and bring communities together. Just the widespread proliferation of being able to find texts that you wouldn't be able to find, like in libraries or very obscure. You can find them on things like Safaria or like Open Sitter.
I love Safaria.
Wikipedia. So yeah.
Stephen Ewing, a follow-up to his thing, he says, so would you agree with this? So it's magnifying what is there as opposed to making a significant impact or a change in the relationship between the movements.
Yes.
Back around the time of Haskalah, back early 1900s, late 1800s, as Haskalah was rising, basically the birth of the non-Orthodox movement. Because remember, prior to that, there was neither Orthodox nor non-Orthodox, as our guest is saying. It was just Judaism. There was Sephardic and Ashkenazi, but they got along fine. But after the period of Haskalah and the birth of the Reform movement, followed by the Conservative movement, a lot of Orthodox Jews, well, they named themselves Orthodox Jews, but a lot of traditional
They were actually named Orthodox Jews by the Reform movement first. They didn't self-claim until, I think, Rabbi Ettlinger in like the 1890s.
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of these newly defined Orthodox Jews felt that they needed to build very clear walls to distinguish us from them. And that's where some of the more extremist elements of Orthodoxy began to really creep in a lot. On the internet today, what I'm seeing is that there's an awful lot of non-Orthodox Jews who are going to Orthodox websites and looking and understanding what they've lost. And there's also a lot of Orthodox Jews who are starting to think maybe we're throwing the baby out with the bathwater. So I think it's actually softening some of those edges that we've had since the period of Haskalah.
There are a softening of the edges. However, the problem is the people doing the softening of those edges are now being sort of disavowed by the people in sort of the center of that fabric.
No, that's true. Like with the new
Modern
modern
orthodoxy, that other people are saying, "Oh, that's not really orthodox." You know?
Right, that's exactly what I was thinking. Yeah. What is that thing? You go into a town that has 5 Jews, you'll have 5 synagogues. Or you have 6 synagogues. One is for the ones who come visit.
Well, they don't go to, right?
Right. It's absolutely. Shlomo Silverman has a great thing he likes to say, which is that we Jews are excellent at multiplication, but we're pretty bad at division. I'm sorry, we're pretty bad. We're great at division, but we're pretty bad at multiplication. I got it backwards. Shlomo, are you on with us now? I'd love to hear your voice and have you share something or say something. Maybe we'll make out to cut some more wood.
That was somebody pressing the wrong button.
Shlomo, are you there?
He was not going to be back.
Okay.
Hi, sorry, technology.
That's no problem. So thank you, by the way, for introducing me to MaNishtana. I'm really glad that this has been a wonderful thing, I think. Is there anything that you would like to ask him or comment on or anything while we have him here?
Oh, I'm like I said. Is there anything that we can do to help to raise awareness to this? And with respect to the racism, it's appalling to me personally. It's one of my pet peeves about humanity.
The worst kind of people.
Yeah. I mean, I personally, like my own experience when I going back, I don't know, being about 1967, 1968, I was about 10 years old. I learned about apartheid in South Africa, and I just freaked out. And then that's how far back this whole racism thing is affected me, and it's been a profound thing. And I know three or four really devout brothers in Chicago that could use some help, and I'm thinking, how could I do that? They've come through a lot. They've got a lot of struggles there. And then when I saw the tweet come by about you speaking out about this, and I thought, well, I want to jump on this and raise this awareness a little bit. It's important to me. I mean, especially like I said, with our Bet Din coming out of the Dominican Republic and stuff like that, and I've been put in a box personally, and I'm of a fair-skinned nature, but I've been put in a box. People get these ideas. I just call myself a Platovitcher now, so I live in northern Canada, so Plat is a very common thing. But if there was something that I could do to assist you and reach out, and I'll retweet and stuff. I'm just learning how to use Twitter now, so I wanted to bring it up, and my rabbi was actually suggested that he'd like to have guests on and whatnot, and congratulations, you're one of our significant guests in the last little while. I'm really pleased about it all. So thank you for coming, and you have my contact info, so please feel free to reach out if there's anything I can do to just send a letter or whatever.
Definitely will.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Shlomo. I appreciate it. I would. By the way, I would just like to add. I mean, you're a rabbi, so you're not, or you're a congregational rabbi, so it's probably not going to be applying. But you are absolutely welcome at the House of Seven Beggars anytime, and you and yours. We do every Sabbath services online by making sure that everything is set up on ahead of time before Shabbat begins. Everything
Mm-hmm.
is on timers and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
If you leave your computer on, we either restart it before Shabbat begins and then turn it on before it begins. Then let's leave it on for the whole 25 hours and have it on our YouTube channel. And people don't even have to click the button to start it. It just starts because it's on timers. So that's how we've been
Interesting.
doing it for like 13 years or something. I lead the services every Sabbath prior to a Rosh Chodesh, and Rabbi Aaron Nachman Ben Chaim leads them the rest of the time unless he's sick or something, in which case I fill in. But we would love to invite you and anyone else out there, regardless of your race or what have you. If you don't have a congregation that you feel comfortable in, or you don't have one close enough for you to attend on Shabbat, you are more than welcome with us. And I'm offering 4 regular weekly broadcasts. Our rabbi does 2 regular, not counting Shabbat. And I would love to have you come back. We also do a Noahide group on Thursday evenings. I would also be really interested in having you perhaps on one of our Noahide broadcasts to discuss that topic, because I bet you have a lot to add on that.
Maybe, I don't know.
Well, we could find out if
I
I
might.
start.
We can find out together.
We'll start asking you questions, and we'll find out together. But I would definitely like to have you join us on that. As far as I don't really know what we could do to assist you, because you seem to me like you know what you're doing already. But
It's all smoke and mirrors.
yeah, but if you do have some message that comes up and you really want to get it out, I mean, I don't know, something happens and you really want to try to get the message out to a different audience or whatever. I would love to. You have a standing invitation, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Thank you.
Anytime, contact me and let me know. The Wednesday broadcast, this one is when we try to do most of our interviews and that sort of thing. It's also when we have our best numbers as far as people who are watching. Normally, it varies. But you have a standing invitation, though. Anytime, you are more than welcome to join us here. On the chat screen, assuming I can find the right window, there it is. I'm going to include the rabbi's Facebook link, and those who are interested can certainly go and send him a friend request on Facebook. And this video will be available on YouTube probably 10 or 15 minutes after we finish. It takes about 10 minutes for YouTube to process things. But the video will be available there also on my YouTube channel, which is where we currently are. Any other questions, comments, or thoughts or anything? Shlomo says, "Does Rabbi Ma? Do people call you Rabbi Ma?"
This is literally the first time that's ever happened.
I do want to point out.
Just a second on that point. We call Rabbi Ariel Nachman Ben Chaim. We call him Rabbi A all the time. So far, people haven't started calling me Rabbi Shlo.
I do want to point out.
Go ahead, Donald.
For those who go to the link, okay, of Rabbi Mas, I still can't pronounce it. I'm sorry. I have a brain injury anyway. So, but if they go to the site that you published, that is not his Facebook. That is a shoot. I don't know what you call it. It's a.
I just clicked it. It's his Facebook.
Yes, but it doesn't say you can add him as a friend.
Oh, you could probably follow the page though there.
Right. Yeah.
You have an actual page where you can like.
Yes.
Personal pages you can follow. Like I have learnamuna.com or Learnamuna as my Facebook business page. You can only like those. Yeah, that's a good point, Donald. Thank you. Do you have a personal Facebook page that you'd like to share?
I do. If you look for Chase T. Rishon on Facebook, that'll be me.
I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll make my life simpler for you, Rabbi.
Uh-huh.
It's just Donald Willinger. Please send me an invitation. To hang you.
I
All
love
right.
it.
Uh, we hopefully get an A for efforts, if not for what we're doing. Our heart's in the right place. How about that? Go over there and like his page, and then say howdy, and I'm sure he'll be happy to send you a link to his personal page. How about that?
Definitely.
All you got to do is write. Yeah, no, sorry, my brain didn't work that good either. I could ask you to spell it, but I'm not going to bother doing that. Shlomo says, "Does Rabbi MaNishtana record and broadcast shore?" That's a good question, a good thing. Do you make broadcasts and podcasts and that sort of thing, Rabbi?
I don't. I've been thinking about it, but I really just don't have the technology to pull that off, I don't think.
I can actually give you some, so could Shlomo for that matter, but we could both give you some pointers. It's actually a lot easier than you might think.
Oh,
On Facebook I would actually go with YouTube now because YouTube is easier. On YouTube, up in the top right-hand corner, or it's not easier, but it's more dependable. Up on the top right, where it has your profile picture, there's you might see my channel, and it will give you an option to upload a video or to go live. If you don't want to have guests and you don't want to have like a song that starts it with a banner like I do, click that live when you're live. And you can
cool.
schedule it. If you want to do it a little bit fancier, there's a little bit more you have to do, but then you can put it on a timer so you can say you're going to go live like at 12 o'clock on Wednesdays. A little bit more of a involved in that, but I'm more than happy to show you. And then there's free software like OBS Studios that is what I use. So you're currently on my Hangouts broadcasting actually to my OBS software, which is broadcasting to my YouTube. But if you're interested, I'll be happy to maybe help you walk through that with you.
Sure.
And I would love to have you back. I would love to have you back. Normally, like I say, we have like our regular broadcast. I frankly do most of the talking. What can I tell you? It's my broadcast. but you're always welcome to join us for this one too, though, if you'd like. It's every Wednesday on my Facebook page. I always post the stuff before I start. Be more than happy to add you to my hangout for the current conversations anytime you'd like to join us.
Sure.
And if anything new comes up that you'd like to share specifically or whatever, let us know. If you write a shore that you'd like to share, hey, let me know. We'll do it some Wednesday. You can share your shore with us.
I think there is something that I would like to share. Like, I've been thinking, people have been asking across the course of the podcast, like, how can I help? How can I have broadcast? And I really hadn't had any idea. But now I'm realizing that the novel I just wrote, which recently just won Jewish Book Council as a finalist in debut fiction, Ariel Sampson, Freelance Rabbi. That, I would say, buy the book, read the book, disseminate the book, because it touches about a lot of topics that we spoke about here, and just how that existence as someone who's a Jew of color, particularly as someone who's an African-American Jew, navigating both like the non-Jewish African-American world and the Jewish, mostly white world. And I think there's a lot of insight there to like what happens when we sit at Shabbat tables, like what the "How are you Jewish?" questions, the stairs walking down the street, a bunch of different things, and like how race and religion just snowball into a thing. So I would say go out and pick up Ariel Sampson, Freelance Rabbi. It's on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. Go for it.
Tell you what, how about this? If you can send me a copy of it, I will have you back on, and we will spend the whole 2 hours. You can hawk your book.
Oh, sure, we could do that too.
I'll give you my address once we're done here.
Awesome.
You know what else we could do is if you feel you and Aruva, review the book, you can decide if we could do it on you know how we read these books, because that's what we do, and we will read the various books like okay, you might study it and see if that's something that we could incorporate in, as we finish one book, bring that in.
I would be totally open for that. Unfortunately or fortunately, we are at the point where we are now with our readings on Wednesdays, which is the main time we do full books. We're only about halfway through, a little bit more than halfway through Direct Hashem. It would be quite a while before we finish that one. And on Sundays, Ahuva and I do more novels, which it sounds like this is more of a novel, right?
It's definitely a novel.
Yeah. So let's talk. Let's talk. Let's talk.
Sounds like
I
a plan.
just it was just an idea, Rabbi.
No, it's a good.
Rabbi.
It's a great idea. I like the idea. I'm just thinking about the technical side of it.
Yeah, if it's too involved, we can't do it. If it's too,
Well, what it would mean me committing yet more time online, which would make my wife very happy. She's saying you're not allowed.
We all heard that.
You heard that, huh?
she needs to see that thing that I posted the other day where
I'm online a lot.
the guy's on kitchen. He's in his kitchen, and you see his wife cooking, and she says, "I told you to bring home a couple of ribeyes." And he's got two rabbis.
But I frankly, I just honestly, I'm already too busy. But when we finish Direct Hashem, by then hopefully I will have read the book, and that's definitely a possibility. But I don't want to commit to it at this point. But I would love to do a show with you once I've read the book and can have some decent questions to ask you and that sort of thing. I would love to do a broadcast with you on the topic, because I think that not only race relations, but disassociations, not in the clinical sense. There's a word I'm trying to think of that's not popping into my head. But separation of peoples among our people as Jews, whether it's on racial lines, movement lines, gender lines, all of these lines, it's crazy. And it's why the second temple was destroyed. So here we are, we're saying, God, send us your Messiah. We want Messiah now. But we're doing the same things they did. Why would Hashem send the Messiah and send the temple when we're doing the very things that he destroyed the temple for?
I've definitely rebuked several someones, once or twice, saying you're wondering why Mashiach isn't here. If you really want an answer, you should just look in the mirror.
Look in the mirror. Yep. So this is near and dear, I think, to all of our hearts here. And what you're doing is you are, it seems to me, you are looking at one area where there is a really serious division and trying to combat it. Because that's too military of a word. Trying to soften those edges. Trying to get...
No, I will say combat it. This is, I'm definitely will go with combat.
Yeah. Shlomo, who is here, but he posted, because Shlomo is very polite. Donald and I just sort of walk all over each other. We know each other. That's what we do. Shlomo is very polite. He doesn't like to interrupt. But he does say, maybe I'll do the book myself on Get Vocal. I cannot for the life of me figure out how to get vocal working. And I'm pretty good at figuring stuff out. I cannot figure out how to get it working where I can simulcast on Facebook and YouTube. And if I can only do on YouTube, I come here and I don't have any ads.
Mm-hmm.
But Shlomo is developing his Get Vocal group quite nicely. So I'm sure he's going to be talking to you as well about maybe doing your book on Get Vocal. If we did it, I would want to do it with you. And because I know that the stuff that I write, when I'm talking about it, it brings more to mind, and I go into more detail than is in the book.
Mm-hmm.
So that might be good. And if Shlomo does it on Get Vocal with you, then I will do my best to plug in to Get Vocal to watch that as well. I like the idea a lot, though. And I totally applaud what you're doing, and I love that you're not doing it from a hateful, separationist, blaming perspective. that, there's that famous saying by Mahatma Gandhi, which apparently Tevye also says in Fiddler on the Roof, which didn't click in my head until we watched that as a group the other day. But Gandhi and Tevye both said, an eye for an eye, a tooth for the tooth, and all you end up with is a blind, toothless world.
Mm-hmm.
There's been offenses all around. I don't think there's any people on the earth who cannot say that the others have not offended them. I mean, we all have griefs. We need to get over that. We need to say, as Donald and I with this broadcast, now what? Okay? All of our animosity, all of our differences, all of our hatred led us to this point in time. It doesn't matter. Now what do we do? Do you want to live in a world that is divided on racial lines, on religious lines, to the point of tribes fighting each other? I love the way you describe that too, by the way. Nothing wrong with tribalism, but the tribes need to work together.
Exactly.
That's always my attitude when I'm talking to Christians and Muslims. It's like, no, we don't agree. That's okay, though. We can agree to disagree. We can respect each other. We can work together in those areas that we do agree. My tribe didn't have to agree with your tribe on everything. We don't have to do things the same.
That's why they're different tribes. If you agree on everything, you'd be the same tribe.
Yeah, and just because I think I'm right doesn't mean I'm condemning what you think is right. So,
well, I've never argued with anyone who agreed with me, rabbis. So you guys can go to the bank with that one.
Now you're the Donald that I was expecting. You were too serious. I told him going in, I said my co-host has a really good sense of humor. And you were doing all this really serious commentary. I've been waiting for the humor, Donald. You had me concerned a little bit there.
we do things that, well, this is why he would enjoy Thursday night when we get the, we do the Noahide thing. And then I got asked a question offline that I thought was absolutely hilarious. What was the primary difference between going with the Reform movement and becoming a Jew there and going to the Orthodox? And I said, well, the Reformed, you get to ride a greased pig. What to say to that?
That's an in-house joke, though, that I don't think we want to go into right now.
No, I just throw it in. And they just, because what's funny is that all they knew about was the Orthodox. And they told me what had happened was that they told me that they enjoy eating pork, and that the Reform told them they could eat pork. And of course, I'm sitting there. Well, I'm sorry, but we can only do that on the 32nd day of Adar too, which is the 32nd day of Adar.
Most people aren't going to get right. All right.
I'm terrible.
You can do it on the 31st. We don't even get as far as the 31st.
I know, but you say 32nd.
Just to be sure. All right. I want to thank MaNishtana for being with us, and Donald and Shlomo and/or Shoshi, depending on who is there behind that mule. I'm glad that you're here. We're going to go ahead and close this out now. Shlomo and/or Shoshi, do you have anything you'd like to say in closing? Shlomo?
Sorry.
There we go.
Yeah. No, I think I've said everything that I could. I appreciate the time of everyone. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Shlomo. I appreciate it. And thank you again for setting this up for us. I really do appreciate it. Donald, anything in closing?
Oh, I think this was absolutely wonderful. It's a great experience for us, and I look forward to both of you, both rabbis, and Slow Motion, who's studying to be a rabbi. I think that this is absolutely fantastic that we could do this during what now, what next, and this is these are topics that need to come out, that need to be discussed, that need to enlighten everybody. And we need to do this kind of thing. That's what it's about. So I appreciate you being here, Rabbi Masnishma. I'm terrible.
Closer. That was closer. That's good.
I'm getting there.
I'm no one to talk, but it sounded
All the consonants were there.
But it is an honor and a pleasure to meet you, and I mean that sincerely, sir. And I hope that you will come whenever you would like, whenever you're free, or at least very reasonable, because we're kind of poor. But now you're seeing my
Here we
sights
go.
come out.
Here we go.
Yes.
all right.
But
Thank you, Donald. I appreciate that.
and all the ladies and gentlemen in the audience, I want to thank each and every one of you for being here. And Slow Motion, thank you so much for setting this up. This is just absolutely wonderful.
We've had a number of comments come in the last couple minutes. Let me shoot through these comments, and then we'll go to MaNishtana for his last comments, and then a little bit of what's coming up. So hang on, just have a second. So looking back here, we see that Stephen Ewing has said, oops, I went back too far. Yes, I agree that many non-Orthodox are seeking guidance from Orthodox and conservative movements. My shul is reform with many reformadox people. I question how long the reform can continue as it is or as it was. Actually, a lot of the reform movements are now returning back more towards classic reform, whereas most of those who are wanting reformadox tend to be becoming conservative Jews. And many of the conservative movement is facing a potential split as we're getting conservaform and conservadox. Everything is in transition right now, which is probably a sign of growth. It's probably good, but we don't know what's going to happen next. It's all Meshuggah. And Stephen also says, what would be the impact on acceptance of the reform as many are becoming more observant within that movement? And what impact will the official positions of the reform movement have? Anytime you go to a synagogue, Stephen, it is going to be a local synagogue to some degree. Every synagogue is a little bit different depending on the rabbi and depending on the congregation. I don't see the same trend overall that you're describing. I think most of the reform who are wanting to become more observant are moving to conservative or orthodoxy, whereas the movements themselves are moving back towards classical reform. You have any thoughts on that, Rabbi?
That seems fairly accurate.
Yeah,
Even though, actually, in my experience, the reform congregations aren't even moving towards classic reform; they're just becoming secular, like sort of wholesale.
Which is sort of classical. Anyway, I'm trying to be polite. Guy says a human being is a human being unless made like myself by Dr. Frankenstein. Put together with your leftover and spare parts. Laugh out loud. Yeah, guy's another one of our comedians here. We appreciate your humor.
I appreciate the literary humor.
There you go. Slow-mo says, does Rabbi... Oh, we asked about that one. Let's see. Yeah, that's a good question. Shlomo is asking, Rabbi, do you have access to the chat screen here on YouTube right now? Are you?
I do not.
I
do not.
Okay. Would you send me a link to where your book is published?
Sure.
On Facebook, PM me, or on my email, either one. I tend to prefer Facebook, but on the PMs, but email is fine if that's easier. And then I will append it to this broadcast and see if we can't get the word out a little bit. And then I want to read your book and then have you back as a guest so that I'm more familiar with what you're talking about in the book, so I could ask you more relevant questions and stuff. We'll get that to you there, Shlomo. If it would be on that page that you've got, though, right? I'm assuming. Did I just?
Somewhere on the page, probably. At the very least, it's under my Twitter bio. That link right there.
So go to his Twitter bio or to the page and look for it. You should be able to find it. I'll add it as soon as I get it as well.
The link on the page links to the book on Amazon.
Yeah. And Rabbi, if you send me the direct link, I can put it on my page as well. And, because people are either going to you, Rabbi Shlomo, or they're going to me on these groups and, they're friends. And we just put it on there as a... We'll
try to get this out. And then I do want to do an interview with you once I have a chance to look at the book as well.
Fantastic.
Guy says, sad part is we look at it darkly most of the time. I'm not quite sure the context there, but we certainly tend to look on the dark side of things, the negative side of things, far too often. Dennis says, I missed all of it, but I'll pick it up later on. Well, that's a good thing about doing this on YouTube. Now you don't have to wait for me to download it to my computer and upload it back to YouTube. When we finish, it goes on YouTube directly. So it's a lot easier than it used to be. Dennis said, I read that. Blessing, have a good one. A few people are saying to us, yeah, this is being recorded, Dennis. It'll be on my YouTube page about 10 minutes after we finish here. It takes YouTube about 10 minutes to process everything. Wait 10 or 15 minutes, and it should be on my YouTube channel. Same place you are now. I'll also be copying that and posting it on my Facebook page as well once we're done. Steven says, we only have Reform within 4-hour commute of here, so we get a variety of people. Well, that's the thing about every community. When we lived out in California, the synagogue that we were involved with there, because of lack of options, was technically Reconstructionist. But we had a lot of Reform-minded people, a lot of people who were more Orthodox. We were among the more Orthodox. But most synagogues actually have a mixed bag of people.
We definitely have a mixed bag.
It's hard to really sort of stereotype people. It's just the Reform movement, not the Reform movement, the movement names will give you a general sense of the direction of the congregation, but it really does depend on the individuals who are involved.
Yeah.
Okay, so now I think we're done. So again, Rabbi, thank you so much. Do you have anything that you would like to share with us? Huh?
This was a great conversation. I enjoyed it extremely. I'm looking forward to hanging out with you guys again in the future.
I would love it. You're always welcome to anything we do. So now it's the time of the show at the end when I tell you the things that we do. So today is Wednesday, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I do appreciate it. I appreciate you sharing this with your friends. And by the way, when you go to YouTube and see this, please like it. When we changed over to YouTube, I now have a different YouTube page than my old YouTube page. The new one is going to be called Learn Amuna, as opposed to my old one, which was called All Faith Vids. Since I'm not doing All Faith anymore, but it has a new domain name, I'm changing the YouTube page name as well. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Once I get 100 subscribers, I'll be able to get a good name for it, a good URL. Right now, it's a bunch of dots and names and this kind of stuff. Please, 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 I'm going to grab the link for you right now. Join me on my new YouTube channel. Subscribe to it. I'm going to put it now into the chat screen here. And let's no longer have to have this be youtube.com channel/UCKJV yada yada yada. Let's make this YouTube channel Learn Amuna. Subscribe to my site. Help me get to 100 subscribers, and I'll be your best friend for a couple of whole weeks. I appreciate that. Tomorrow at 12 noon, same place, same time, we will have our broadcast of Learn Amuna with Rabbi Shlomo, when we will continue our study of the Ramchal's Derech Hashem. Join us back for that tomorrow at 12 noon. Tomorrow, Thursday evening at 8 p.m., join us on One God, Seven Laws for our broadcast of One God, Seven Laws, where we will continue reading from Mr. Wook's wonderful book, This Is My God. No, sorry, correction. We will not be reading Mr. Wook's book tomorrow. Tomorrow we're going to do something very special. Because of several questions that have been coming in lately, I have created, and I'm still working on it, but I'm that close to being finished with it, a brand new study called Does That Apply to Me? We're going to spend all 2 hours, because it's going to take that, it may even go into 2 broadcasts, to be honest with you, but studying how should Noah Hadim study the Bible? How do you know when you're reading the Bible whether or not what you're reading applies to you or is held apart for the Jews? How do you know that? So we're going to start our discussion by discussing whether or not it's appropriate and acceptable halakhically for Jews to study the Torah. As many of my Noahide friends know, there are Jews who say it is not. I will demonstrate to you from the Talmud that it is.
You said for Jews to study the Torah.
I'm sorry, Huva says I misspoke. Is it appropriate for Noahides to study the Torah and the entire Tanakh? some Jews say it is not, I will demonstrate from the Talmud that in fact not only is it permitted, it is recommended to Noahides. Then we will go into studying several key verses that I've chosen to demonstrate to you how to interpret the Bible as a Noahide and know whether or not a particular command, principle, law applies to you, so that you will know as you're studying, this is for me, this is not for me, and how to deal with the fact or how to comprehend the fact when it's not for you. What does that mean and why isn't it for you? I think it's going to be a really good series that will probably begin tomorrow at 8 p.m. If there are particular texts that you've been wondering about, particular questions, this broadcast will be a great time to bring them up. As we normally do when I'm studying my own material with you, I will want to continue in block text until I get to what I think is a good breaking point. Then we'll stop for questions. Then we'll make sure that we leave ample time at the end for your questions. So you might want to think about the questions that you're going to have to ask us. Veronica, if you are here, could you please post for us the links to the various things if you're not already? And I'm not seeing them if you're here. I don't know if I saw Veronica.
Yes, she was here earlier. And remind me before you end, I want to tell you what the next video is coming up.
Actually, you know what I did not do? I did not. Veronica, if you're watching this, would you please say hi or something? Because I forgot to add you as an admin. That's why you can't post links. I have to do that individually now on YouTube. I didn't used to have to do that on Facebook. You could always post. Veronica, if you're still here, would you just say hi? And then I can appoint you an admin for this particular thread, and then you can post the links like you normally do. If you're still here, and if you're not, don't worry about it. Of course, if you're not, you didn't hear me say that, so it doesn't matter. Anyway, join us tomorrow night for this new study that's going to be quite exciting. Does that apply to me?
I think that'll be very fascinating. But I'd love to tell you what my next video is. You know how the autoplay goes? Which I'm not going to watch autoplay on YouTube. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm talking about, rabbis?
I do.
Okay. The next one in line after you is 8 minutes, 44 seconds. It's Baptist pastor gets beaten and tased by Border Patrol.
But Donald, we're also at the point, though, what I would appreciate no more comments because we gave you your last minute. I want to just shoot through this material. Okay? Thank you.
I didn't see it. Yeah.
I appreciate that, sir. But what they choose for the next is sometimes is just bizarre. So that's tomorrow night, 8 p.m. at One God, Seven Laws. Then we'll be up to Friday. I have not talked to Rabbi A yet, Rabbi Nachman yet. I do not know how he's feeling. I actually wrote him last night. I haven't heard back from him. I may be leading the services this Sabbath, or he may be leading the services this Sabbath. I do not know at this point which one of us will be, but one of us certainly will be. Once we know for sure, Shoshi's not here. Once we know for sure, Shoshi will probably be posting those direct links for you. In the chat screen, however, I'm going to post a link to the Karuv Media Network. If you go to the Karuv Media Network, there you will be able to, all you have to do at that point is simply look to the upcoming videos, and you'll see it there. So join Rabbi or me, tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Eastern at the Karuv Media Network, and then come back Sabbath morning at 10 a.m. for the morning service of the House of Seven Beggars, live streaming on the Karuv Media Network. Join Ahuva and I Sunday at 12 noon Eastern Time as we do the second reading from the Best of Sholem Aleichem. And I know, by the way, that we've been receiving corrections. We know that some people like to write it Sholem with a E or a A or a O. The books almost we've got all have L-O-M, so that's how I'm leaving it. I don't know how the man wrote his name personally, but that's how the book has it. So it's S-H-O-L-O-M as far as I'm concerned. But the Best of Sholem Aleichem with Ahuva and I Sunday at 12 noon right here on Facebook. And then back here Wednesday, and then Monday at 8 p.m. Rabbi A will do story time with Reb Zeta. Zeta is
Rabbi. Did you mean On Facebook, or did you mean on YouTube?
Both,
You
actually.
just said Facebook.
I meant YouTube. Thank you for that correction. Yeah, on YouTube. The link will be on Facebook. Will be on YouTube. Thank you, Donald. Then Monday at 8 p.m., our Rebbe is a Pulitzer Prize nominated children's author for a comic strip series and book called Four Corners. The lead character in that book is a cute little lion, which he had turned into a puppet. So Mondays at 8 p.m., Zeta tells us various Hasidic stories at the Cruve Media Network. Same link I just posted here. So join Rabbi for that on Mondays, and then join on Wednesdays on the Cruve Media Network for Rabbi Ariel Nachman Ben Chaim with Torah study with Rabbi A and Reb Ruvain. Again, because he's been having these health issues with his flu, I don't know for sure if either one of those broadcasts are going to happen. That's when they are, if he is up to doing them. He has not been feeling very well. I hope he's feeling better, but I have not yet had that confirmed. So that's the schedule anyway. Thank you all so much. I do appreciate, Rabbi, I appreciate you being with us so much.
Thank you for having me.
And we're going to go ahead and end here, and I hope you will all join us on tomorrow at 12 noon. Rabbi, if you wouldn't mind holding out on Hangouts until we finish our closing music, I will get you my address, and we can chit-chat a little bit.
Sure, no problem.
All right, thanks, everybody. God bless you, God keep you, and may God cause his face to shine evermore upon each and every one of us. And now, my friends, the Brills, with Take a Look Around.
Open up your eyes, see the beauty around you, and open up your ears and hear nature calling you, and open up your heart and feel the love he has for you, and open up your hand and give to the one who needs you. We got so much to do. The day is here for you. We got mitzvahs to do. That's all we got to do. And if you're feeling down, don't be alarmed. Just look to the one above and ask him for his love. For the secret to success is being very strong, knowing deep down inside that you're not at all alone. With infinite wisdom, and open up your spirit and catch its inspiration, and open up your soul to its spiritual liberation, and open up yourself to the way you should be living. We got so much to do. Is here for you. We got mitzvahs to do. That's all we got to do. And if you're feeling good, don't change your mood. Just look to the one above. Thank him for his love. For the secret to success is being very strong, and knowing deep down inside he's helped you all along. secret to success is being very strong, knowing deep down inside that you're not at all alone. Open up your eyes, see the beauty around you, and open up yourself to the way you should be living.